We all know that the wheels are now in motion for the remake of Resident Evil 4, with many fans pointing towards that being the best game in the franchise. For myself personally, it's Resident Evil 3 for nostalgic purposes. But what if I told you there was a Resident Evil you didn't know about? One that sat directly between Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 4 with lots of unreleased footage. Well, I've got some news for you. Let me introduce you to Resident Evil 3.5. Resident Evil 3.5, or also known as Biohazard 3.5, essentially was Resident Evil 4 before we knew the game as it is today. Resi 3.5 was a mixture of concept projects put together and essentially had to battle to the death to see which concept made it out alive to become Resident Evil 4. Very Capcom, I know. Resi 3.5 consisted of 3 prototype builds which were unique in their own way, before ultimately all of them being scrapped due to the dev team running into recurring problems with the need to be technologically ambitious while still trying to revitalize the series. Why is this relevant now? Well, with the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake, fans are pleading with the devs to implement some of the gameplay mechanics seen in 3.5. Resident Evil 4 is a classic, but it's hard to argue that the movement mechanics are very clunky for new players, and in this day and age, they simply aren't transferable. This is where Resident Evil 3.5 comes into play. The gameplay mechanics oddly look a lot smoother than the actual finalized Resident Evil 4, with many players knowing the frustration of the movement mechanics in the original. Resident Evil 3.5 was reimagined multiple times, with the initial concept named Castle being based on Leon Kennedy invading Umbrella's headquarters and discovering that the progenitor virus was isolated within the mummified remains of a superhuman who was basically the king of the castle quite a while back. Add to this, you've got a naughty bloke called Oswald Spencer who was trying to steal the virus to make himself immortal, and you've got some right drama on your hands. The game would have started with the US Stratcom and Albert Wesker's HCF both attacking the facility at the same time, with both being wiped out, leaving Leon as the last man standing. But there was a slight problem. During this, Leon would be infected with a retrovirus, causing him to mutate throughout the game slowly. The next prototype was a complete switch of gameplay mechanics known as hallucination, in which Leon would be battling hallucinogenic enemies as opposed to real ones. This was an extremely ambitious storyline that required the game to basically be duplicated, as a player could switch between the real and hallucinogenic worlds. At the time, the GameCube was simply not strong enough to hack this, and the game had to be scrapped completely. The final prototype of the game is known as Zombie, and saw the removal of the hallucination mechanics, but kept the castle storyline. The main difference would be the zombie-like creatures known as Daberman, which were controlled by parasitic organisms. This prototype was shut down extremely quickly due to concerns from the company that the game was too formulaic, and that the sales would stagnate as a result. To this day, there's no physical footage of this prototype available. With the announcement of the Resident Evil 4 remake, fans are hoping that some of the mechanics from the prototypes are transferred and updated to current gen, and some are even requesting that a whole new 3.5 game is created. What are your thoughts on the upcoming Resident Evil 4 remake? Has it been overplayed at this point, or are you excited? Let us know in the comments down below, and subscribe for more gaming content.